everybody. Welcome to episode 40 of Destination Talk. I'm John Paz.
And I am Harry, and we are once again coming to you from Chop Studios located at 750 Route 34 in Matawan, New Jersey. And today we are honored to have from the Yes Network and the host of the New York Yankees batting practice show, Chris Shearn. Chris, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking the time to be a part of Destination Talk. How's everything going today?
Guys, everything is great, and the honor is on this side as well. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, we do appreciate that, and I know we were kind of talking before we went recording live here, so I'm going to get this out of the way. I want to send a couple of shout outs and thank yous as to the fact that our good friend John Herbst is what brought us together for this to occur today. And I would be remiss if I don't at least get these names out there. But Sanborn and Matty Moe are excited for this episode. We'll touch on your roots back in New Jersey, South River. I'm an adopted son of that town, but we'll touch on that briefly and momentarily. But Chris, why don't we just jump right into, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell our audience who you are, where you're from, and kind of how you got into this line of work that you find yourself in.
Well, I was born at St. Peter's Hospital in New Brunswick. You want me to go back that far?
Hey, why not? I mean, let everyone know what they need to know, right?
And for the first 3 years of my life, I lived in Spotswood, and then we moved to South River when I was 3. So all of my schooling was through the South River school system. I am a Ram through and through. I bleed maroon and gray. And I guess, wanting to be on television started with sitting on my grandfather's lap, and I'm going to date myself. Now, the kids today, all they have to do is look on their cell phone. They could find scores. They, whatever it is right there, and it's available immediately, instantaneously. Right. As long as you have Wi-Fi and a 5G connection, you're good. But back then, I don't know how far you guys go back, but if the Yankees were playing the Mariners, you would wake up and get the paper, and you wouldn't know, because it would have Yankees versus Mariners and then an N in parentheses for night. It was too late. The paper already went to press before the game was over. So I would get in trouble because I needed to know the score, and I would call 976-1313.
Oh, I have not heard that number in forever.
Yes. And, the phone bill would come, like the house phone bill back in the day. Who the hell called sports phone? They knew who it was. It was me. I just wanted to know if the Yankees won or lost. But getting back to what I was saying, I would sit on my grandfather's lap. We would watch Warner Wolf. And that's what really started the spark. I wanted to be the second baseman for the Yankees, but let's be honest, you could only go so far with limited ability. I played until I was 48 in adult leagues, but it just wasn't going to happen for me professionally. So the second best thing, guys, is to do what I'm doing, and to be where I'm at. I'm blessed. It's going to be. This is my 24th year, so I've been at Yes as long as Don Mattingly's number. How about
that? And if I'm not mistaken, were you there before it became Yes, or like right around that time?
Yes. At the time Yes was being formed, I was at MSNBC.
Right.
And it was right after September 11th. And I'm sure, Chris Dinkoff and the person we lost in our hometown.
Yes.
And I was working overnights for 6 months, and my job was basically watching them pull bodies out of the wreckage. It was great. Right. I say that tongue in cheek because it still to this day has completely destroyed me. There's still a part of me that is dead because of that.
Right.
And one of the producers I worked with at MSNBC left. I didn't know where he went, but we worked on the Imus in the Morning show together. And then we did a special called Imus in the Evening, and I busted my tail on that show. And I must have made an impression because he called me in January of 2002. I had sent my resume into Yes. I want to say I saw like a website when websites were just starting, and it was so cheesy. It had the Nets logo, the Devils logo, the Yankees logo, and they were like spinning. It was like it was bad. Like if you went back and looked at that today, you'd be like, oh God, who designed that? But that was the top of the line back then.
Right.
So it said, send your resume here. It's the Yes Network. So I was like, oh my God. Somebody brought it to my attention. I sent my resume and I got a form letter no thanks. So back to the drawing board. Well, it turns out that the guy, Jeff, who I was busting my rear end around, he went to produce Mike and the Mad Dog at Yes.
Right.
And he called me. And when he called me, he said, just tell me your on-air aspirations are over. And I lied through my teeth. Because I just wanted to get out of there. And I heard Mike and the Mad Dog. He offered me the associate producer job. And he could have offered me sweeping the floor by Mike and Chris, and I would have taken it at that point because of where I was and what I was doing at that time. But 2 years later, he goes on vacation. We were having this issue getting on the air because the show before them, I want to say it was Jody and Sid. I could be wrong, but they would always go long. They would always go long, and we would sit because we had to come up at 1 o'clock on the dot. And we would sit on a still of Mike and Chris's faces, and it just said coming up. And sometimes it was for 2 minutes. Our audio guy had to hit the audio again. He only had a minute track. And sometimes he would be ready to hit it a third. It was just bad. In TV, if you're silent for 5 seconds, that's a problem. Somebody probably thinks you're having a stroke if you're not speaking for 5 seconds. So I went to my other boss and I said, listen, do you mind if I do like a highlight rip? I don't have to be on camera. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, I just want to get on clean. I was producing, Jeff was on vacation, so I figured I'd take a little initiative and the bull by the horns, as they say. And he said, you know what? Send me a tape, send me what you're going to do, but do it on camera. I want to see you on camera. I said, okay. So I did it. He got back to me quick. And I started the Sports Sprint January 5th, 2004. And 6 months later, John Filippelli, who's now retired, he's like the president and executive producer emeritus at Yes, and he deserves every last bit of that title because of what he did to build this network. But he had a meeting with us, the whole crew, and he dismissed us and he grabbed my arm. He said, not you, sit. I said, okay. So he said, you know, I was in my office 6 months ago, and when I first saw you, I said, who the hell approved this? It wasn't hell that he said. I'm just keeping it clean for you guys. But he said, I'm glad that I didn't do anything rash because you're good. And in the future, you know, we might have something for you besides this. So, you know, for a kid who had sent VHS tapes out back then, and that was pricey, all over the country, and getting no after no after no after no after no for like 7-8 years, or for the kids, I should say 6-7 years. To hear yes and to be at Yes, it's kind of poetic. I don't mean to sound cheesy, but getting all that rejection, and I was used to it from girls in high school. It was a joke, guys. Fact, by the way, fact. And if text messages were alive back then, I'd have proof of all the rejection. But yeah, after all that rejection, and then finally, like, getting to that point, and look, even after getting it, there have been ups, there have been downs. I've had to fight. I still have to fight to get dates. It's a very competitive business. The good thing about it is, if you played any sport at South River High School and had any coach at South River High School, you're going to compete. The town is blue collar. You have to fight for everything you have. And my dad embodied everything about that. God rest him. And he lived in Spotswood. And that's when Spotswood was going to South River. He would walk to school. He would walk to school he would hitchhike sometime. I mean, after football practice,
no short work from there.
Yeah, my dad is walking home to Spotswood after football practice. I mean, what the hell is happening? And kids today, I mean, gee, can you do this for me? I'm on my computer. I'm on my iPad. Oh my God, I can't get into it. But, you know, he instilled that work ethic in me and that competitive fire, and he made it, you know, it's in my DNA because of him. I hate to lose. I need to win. Now, if I lose, I'm a gracious loser. I don't like it, but I don't treat people the wrong way. But I think that is what has kept me going this long doing what I'm doing. I'm sorry for the bloated answer, but you kind of made it generic. So I wanted to do encompassing stuff there.
That was great.
No, we appreciate that. And I'm sure our listeners will as well.
Oh, yeah. So when you compare doing brief radio style updates to longer studio segments or field reports, what's the biggest difference in mindset, pace, and preparation when it comes to that kind of work?
Well, when I did the sports sprint, it was like, I don't know, second nature, because when I was at MSNBC, when we had sports, I was the sports producer for our lone sports anchor. And I just watched his every move and picked his brain all the time. I saw how he prepared, how he wrote, how he put his, oh my God. See, this is what happens when you get old, when he put his personality into his writing. And that for me has morphed throughout the years. But there's something with the sprint when you're just doing highlights, like a rip. Like growing up watching Sports Center in college on repeat for 6 hours, and I knew it was going to happen, but I watched it anyway because Patrick, Olbermann, Ravi, Craig Kilborn, Stuart Scott, all these guys, Rich Eisen, Reese Davis, they all started there, and they all inspired me, along with Warner Wolf, Lenny Berman, Scotty Clark, Sal Marciano. And I can't forget my guy who I'm friends with now, and it's amazing, Russ Salzberg. He is such a good guy, and so down to earth, and he's honest. I mean, the guy is just honest. And in this business, that's what you need. You can't have people blowing smoke up your rear end. You have to have people around you that criticize you. That's the only way you're going to get better. And I had somebody in my formative years just like that, and that was my father. If I wanted to hear how great I was, I let my mother talk to me. If I wanted to hear what I needed to work on, my father would grab the phone. So it was that perfect balance between my parents. But back to your question, the sports sprint was second nature. Now, when you're doing reporting, it's a whole different animal. You're talking, we'll take the Yankees, for example. You're talking to Aaron Boone at 4 o'clock. That's when he usually talks to the media. So you go into that press conference. The Yes Network gets the first 2 questions. After that, after I let people go, I can jump back in there if I have a follow-up, if I heard something that might add something to the broadcast. So then after I meet with Aaron Boone, I could go on the field. You know, if there's a story with a player after batting practice, you could pull them aside and just ask them a couple of questions if you're trying to add something to your report when you go on at 6:30 for the pregame. More likely than not, I'm only there filling in for Meredith, and it's a national game, so I really don't need to do that. But if I was filling in for her for a series, which I've done before, I've been to Cleveland for her. Where else have I gone for the Yankees on the road? I think it's just Cleveland, actually. That was a fun trip, too. It was right around the 2016 Republican National Convention was coming in the next week. And I was there, and the camera guy that I had, the shooter, the ENG camera, was saying, yeah, I got to be there next week. I was like, good luck and God bless. But it was fine.
It's funny you bring up 2016 because that was the year John and I went to Cincinnati, Detroit, and Cleveland. We did 3 games in 4 days, and we traveled.
Oh, nice! Holy cow, that's tremendous.
Yeah, we did that in August of 2016. I'll never forget that.
See, I need to do a trip like that. That would be awesome. Like with the boys, you know, just fly out, and then we could rent a car and drive to the cities. That would be ridiculous. My brothers and I were going to rent like a Volkswagen bus. I really wanted to do this when the Yankees played the White Sox at the Field of Dreams field.
Oh yeah, in Iowa.
My dad was sick and in the hospital, and it was just it was a mess. So we never got around to doing it. And there's a place in Greenwich. I drove by it and I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. You could rent those buses. There were like a fleet of them there. I don't know if it's still there, but back then it was. So when you're reporting, again, different animal. After I talk to Aaron Boone, if I have the pregame hit, I'll go back upstairs and I'll sit in the press box where we do the game from, and I'll get my thoughts straight. The producer will call me after Boone speaks, and we'll get on the same page. All right, your first sound pocket is this, your second sound pocket is that. And then you could end on, the injury news, and it's the Montefiore injury report or the Morgan and Morgan injury report, whatever the hell is sponsoring it these days. So then I'll go prepare my words. And I did stand-up comedy for a time. And I got to be honest, man, everything I've done in my life, I've DJ'd, I've done stand-up comedy. Everything I've done to this point has prepared me for what I'm doing, because I do Nets pre and post game shows now at the arena. And a long time ago, Bob Loren said, try not to rely on teleprompter all the time. Try to just watch the game and be able to talk about it. And then I did a podcast, and it was just me on an island for 40 minutes. Sometimes I had a guest, but there were other times I just did the podcast by myself talking. That's not easy to do a podcast for 40 minutes by yourself. So all of this stuff has gotten me here. And when I did, and I brought up the stand-up comedy, not to just pat myself on the back, but to tell you the way I prepared for stand-up. I would write jokes, and then I would have a keyword. So then I would put the keywords on a piece of white lined paper, and then I would memorize the keywords. And if I needed a crib sheet, which I normally didn't, but sometimes I did, if it was new stuff that I wrote, I would put it on the stool in front of me just so I could walk back, pick up my water, and see what the next keyword is. And that would trigger the next joke. And I would just keep going. I do the same thing with the pregame hit. I write everything out. It's my superpower. I don't know how else to explain it. If I write something down, it imprints in my memory, and I'm able to regurgitate everything I wrote. And then I just have that keyword in there that my mind remembers. That's going to get you here. That's going to get you there. That's going to get you to the next thing. And now we've been doing this. It usually was back and forth with the host, but now the way our producers are having it, it's just self-contained, where they throw to us and then we just go. It's a rip. We have boom sound. We might have player sound from the night before, depending on what the storylines are. So reporting is, compared to the sprint where I'm just being, that kid who grew up in South River and making jokes like he's on Sports Center, compared to being buttoned up and very serious and not fooling around. If Bob or whoever's hosting has fun with me, I could have fun back. It's TV, it's entertainment. You're supposed to have fun with people, but for the most part, it's like Dragnet. Just the facts, man. Just the facts. Don't expound. Just get the facts out and you're safe. And that's what I do. Now, hosting is another different animal. Let's take the Nets, since I'm doing that now. If the game's at 7:00, I will probably get to Barclays Center by 3, because sometimes it takes me 4 hours to get there, by the way.
Oh boy.
I used to work in Williamsburg, and I drove past that arena being built. And what's funny about that is I didn't realize that was the Barclays Center till after it was done.
I was there for the groundbreaking. I interviewed Jay-Z, actually.
Okay, not bad.
I nearly crapped my pants.
I used to make the left-hand turn off of 4th Avenue onto Flatbush Avenue.
Yep.
And I would head over to Tillery Street to get back on the BQE, because that was the get around, because the Gowanus, for those who are familiar with it, is right up there with the Belt Parkway, is one of the worst highways in the world. And it's horrible.
The people who constructed that probably just said, we are going to make this the most awful area on the planet, and they could just deal with it.
Yeah, having lived in Brooklyn for 18 years and then working there for 3.5 in my part of my adult life, it was fun to go back home, but it would take me 2 hours sometimes to just go 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's kind of like being an uncle. You could hold the baby, you could play with the baby, and then you get to leave the baby. You don't have to take care of it anymore. Yeah, it's nice to visit home, but it's always nice to get back to your new home.
Yeah. To your point, though, I think the people might have been blind or something when they made these highways, because it's just awful.
It is awful. I'll give you an example. It took me the Sunday after Thanksgiving 2 years ago, it took me 4 hours to get to Brooklyn. It took me 3 hours and 5 minutes to get to Philadelphia for a playoff game.
That's just not fair.
It isn't. So anyway, I'll get there like 3:00, 3:30, and our research department, led by the great Jeff Quagliata, I'll give him a plug. He sends out what's called a one sheet, but it's not one sheet. It's like 6 or 7 pages of just every stat imaginable. And if there's a question you have on any of these stats, or if you want to expound on it, they'll research and dig in even more. So you're so prepared. So I take a legal pad and I go through his one sheet and I write down, I get the rundown too. So I look at the rundown for the pregame. I look at the one sheet and I just get everything organized. And if I think something that Frank Isola could, I listen to his radio show in the morning. I know what buttons to push, and that's why it's such great TV, because he is phenomenal at what he does. And I love working with him because I know exactly what to do to get him going. And once he gets going, it's phenomenal TV. So I'll get everything prepared. If I think there's something, again, that I want to even hit harder, the copy of the rundown I have in front of me, besides my legal pad, I will write it on the rundown in the bottom section where there's space. That way it reminds me, this is important. Let's get this out, especially if we're doing a final thoughts in the last block. So the pregame comes, then Frank and I watch the game. We do halftime. We watch the second half. We're taking notes. He is so methodical. He makes a score sheet for himself so he could track runs. I mean, it's all done for you on NBA courtside,
right?
But he's so old school. He's like me. If he writes it down, like the stuff that he comes up with in a post-game show, when I tee him up, I was like, this guy's locked in. This team, is not really doing well this season, and he's locked in like they're NBA contenders. And that should be a lesson for any kids that are watching this. Nothing could be taken lightly. I did Ivy League football and basketball, and I treated that like Sunday Night Football and the NBA on NBC. You have to, because you never know who's watching. Seriously. And I'm convinced everything I've done, people have seen, and they're like, we could trust him here. I do a little bit more. You know what? I think we could trust him here. It's been a slow burn, but because you got to remember, a lot of people start at small markets. I started here. Now, granted, It was when did I begin on the air? I was 30. So it was later. I went to Elmira, New York. This is when I was 26. One of my friends from MSNBC got a job as a reporter there. She said, hey, we're looking for a weekend sports anchor. Why don't you come up for an interview? I said, okay. So I made the 5-hour drive to Elmira, New York. And I sat down with the news director. Most of the people there were like 22, 23. And I was 26. And the guy was like, well, there's a weekend sports anchor, that we need to fill. But your main job is going to be directing and TDing the morning news, then getting a camera and going out and shooting for the evening news. And then once in a while, we'll throw a bone and you could anchor the weekend sports. And I was like, okay. And how much are we talking about? So, excuse me, I had a lock in for 3 years. And they were going to give me a whopping $18,000. And I shook his hand. I was like, thanks, but I got to be honest with you. I can't do that. So,
right.
College loans were still a thorn in my side. And there's no way I could have eaten, not even ramen at that point. So every stage of what I do, I think it's prepared me, guys, for the next stage in the next rung of the ladder. But, every job that I do has a different skill set applied to it, but every one of those skill sets benefits every one of those jobs. So think of it like a dull knife that over time is going to be like, I'm going to date myself, a Ginsu knife that can cut through a Coke can and then cut through a tomato. That's how people have to go into it. The task you might be performing at this moment might be menial, but that menial task, you're going to look at that when you're 10 years down the road and say, you know what? I'm glad I did that because now I get an understanding. And the perfect example of that is when I was at MSNBC, I did everything behind the scenes, including edit. I was an editor too. I just took it upon myself. If the editors, if we were inundated with stuff, I jumped in as an associate producer and I would cut the video. That has helped me because now when I'm on set and somebody makes a mistake, I don't go off the handle. I know it's crazy back there. I know what happens. I've made mistakes. I've had Ann Curry, who worked for NBC News, throw a hissy fit because I gave her the wrong scripts. I get it. Stuff happens. And I'll never forget this. The senior producer at the time of that mistake, guy named Chris Hampson. I don't even know if he's still with us. A British guy. And he saw how upset I was because I hate doing that. Remember, I'm a competitor. I don't want to do anything wrong. And I'm a perfectionist, but mistakes happen. So he looked at me dead up and goes, Chris, did anyone die? And I looked at him kind of quizzically and I said, no. And he goes, well, F it, get over it, and let's go. I said, okay. And it's live TV.
Right.
Stuff like that is going to happen. Mistakes are going to happen. But it was that behind the scenes stuff that I did at MSNBC that gave me that mindset. You know, you're not above anybody. We're all on the same level. Now, there are people who think they're above you, but we'll leave that for another discussion. However, most of the people in this business, they get it. They get Bob Lorenz and Jack Curry are two of the best people I know. They've always been there to help, and I'll have nothing but good things to say about them. John Flaherty as well. I could just sit here naming names, but I won't bore you with all that stuff.
So, Chris, you had an opportunity at one time to be a part of probably the sports talk show at the time. I don't know if the younger generation realizes just how big and huge Mike and the Mad Dog was. I know for me, it was much must listen radio at 1 o'clock. Especially, you know, I think some of the teams we like don't align, but, you know, when they were talking about those teams, but you wanted to hear what they had to say. I don't know what you can or can't say, and I won't put you on the spot, but can you just talk a little bit about, you know, what was it like working with those two? I mean, they're sports icons, and they're both still doing their thing today. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Let's see. Where do I start?
We could probably finish the podcast with just this question, most likely. But
yeah, because this. Listen, I always worry about when I do interviews, people giving short answers. That is something you obviously don't have to worry about with me. I love to talk. Love to talk. So, all right, let's start with this. First and foremost, I went into the job with a reverence for these guys. Like, I placed them on the pedestal. They did not. They never acted like that when I first started work. Never. They treated, you saw how they treated Chris Carlin, Mark Malusis, their guys. Yes. You know, we used to have those Christmas shows.
Yes.
And at, you know, from 5:30 to 6:30, they were just opening gifts.
Right.
And they didn't get them like $10 gifts. They always took care of their guys. They are so solid in that aspect. I'll tell you a quick story about Malusis's wedding. My wife never met any one of these guys. So we go to the church, and after the ceremony, Chris comes up to us and says, listen, we got a spread at the house, wine, beer, we got food. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, they're going to take pictures. Jeannie and I will take care of you. Come on over. So I was like, wow. So we go to the compound, and dude, we're watching golf with dog. Like, my wife has no idea how out of body I am right now, because you brought up Brian Sanborn. Brian Sanborn used to sit in his bedroom and do a mock WFAN sports talk show. He still has those cassettes, by the way.
Yes.
We used to go to the park and play basketball and talk about what Mike and Chris were talking about. So to be in this guy's house, breaking bread and watching like a major golf tournament with him, I'm pretty sure it was the British Open. It was amazing. And then we went to the cocktail hour, and we're sitting with him and his wife, Jeannie. And, you know, me, Jeannie, and my wife, we go up and we get some finger foods and some drinks. Dog was at the table, and when we got back, he left. He never came back. And my wife is watching him. Everybody's coming up to him. And she turned to Jeannie and she said, doesn't that bother him? And she looked at my wife and she goes, he loves it. So look at what he does on his Sirius channel. Look at what he does with Stephen A. Smith. The guy's getting up there in age, and he hasn't lost a scintilla of a mile an hour on his fastball.
No, his passion is still there, and he still can't pronounce names, which is absolutely hysterical. And
the wide receiver was great.
I mean, Boomer and Gio like to, play his clips, and it just brings me back to being young again, because that's what we had. WFAN, when they started, like I'm one of those people who can say I've been there for the entire time. And the concept of sports radio, which was brand new,
1987,
which was piggybacking off of ESPN from 1979, and then Susan Waldman, which is always that way. If I'm not mistaken, was July 1st was the very first voice, and obviously Susan's still calling the games for the Yankees on radio.
Yes, sir. So Mike is kind of a different person than Dog, not in a bad way. I mean, but
he's got that Brooklyn mentality.
He's very businesslike. Mike expects excellence, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that way of thinking has to come back. I think you have to always set the bar as high as you can. And if you messed up, he got on you. But, throughout my time with coaches, with my father, I was around that my whole life, man. It didn't faze me. It motivated me to do better for him. So Dog was more the affable guy, the guy you could approach. And Mike, you just kind of had to feel him out. But he wasn't a bad guy. He wasn't. He just expected highly of you. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. I'll tell you a great story that Chris Carlin told me. It's a safe one. They went to do the Pacers and Knicks playoff series, and Chris's room was ready. Mike and Chris's room wasn't. So Chris, being the producer he was and knowing those two, said, guys, you could take my room, go up there, just relax, get some room service. I'll wait down here. When they tell me your rooms are ready, I'll come up and get you. So it was like an hour and a half later. Carlin comes back up to the room. They're watching The Horse Whisperer together. And Chris said they're sitting there watching it in these chairs. And while the movie is on, they're breaking it down like game 6 between the Knicks and Pacers. That's a bad job by Redford there, Mike. Shouldn't have done that at that point of the movie. Dog, I agree. He should have waited. And he just kind of like stood there and watched it. And then he said, hey, do you want anything to eat? And they shushed him so they could continue watching and break this stuff down. So it didn't matter what it was. These guys are always thinking. They're always being analytical about everything. And I got to tell you, people could say what they want about them. No one's going to touch them. No one.
No, they are their own Mount Rushmore.
Yes. And Harry, you could attest to this. They could bring any guest on, any guest, any college basketball coach. They are walking encyclopedias.
Yes.
And that's what you have to be. And the closest show to those two. Now, look, they're still miles away, but Boomer and Gio.
Yes.
They kind of have that same feel. They're good together. They got that great repartee, and they're close. But no one will ever be Mike Francesa and Christopher Mad Dog Russo. And Imus brought them together.
Yes.
And that was probably, I mean, if you think about it, one of the most trailblazing things that anyone has ever done in radio. Besides,
if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it because Francesa used to do the updates on Imus's show, and didn't he promise him a car or something of that nature? And that became a big thing as well. And then Imus kind of backed out on it, but but he is the reason why they came together. He told the producers at the WFAN, you need to put these two guys on air, and the rest is history.
Yeah. And it was great because, and something that you guys don't know probably, when we had them on Yes, I can't speak before they were on Yes. I can only speak from like 2002 to 2000, 10-ish when Dog left. Has it been that long?
It probably has been.
But in that stretch, there were collective bargaining agreement arguments on baseball, and Mike would always side with the owners. Dog would always side with the players, and they would go at it on the air, and it wouldn't stop. When we went to commercial, they were still going at it. And
their rants were legendary, especially when Mike would go off on the Yankees or the Giants, football Giants, and then Chris with the San Francisco Giants, because that's who he was most passionate about.
We still have that when he said bleep that GD when he was like one time.
Yeah.
It's radio gold. They have Marconis, for crying out loud. There's no higher honor in radio than those Marconis. I don't think people, like you said, I don't think people understand how good they are. They are the gold standard. And that, like I told you, Mike always looks for excellence. If you're going to start a podcast or a radio show, that's the bar you should be shooting for. Those two, because they were phenomenal.
Well, I think the biggest show of respect is when Gio is still, and I from what you hear, like Francesca kind of doesn't like it, but I absolutely love it as someone who grew up listening to them. But when Gio mimics their voices and says it, I mean, and I know not to bring up another, but I love when he goes to Joe Beningo, especially when he's ranting about the Jets and like what he might be saying. I mean, to me, that's why I would turn these shows on, because it's entertainment.
Well, Isola and I will be at the desk at Barclays Center, and we go through the schedule. It's a loss. It's a loss.
Right,
it's
like they used to do. Yep.
Yeah, and they're still in our heads. They live rent free in our heads. And the other thing Frank does too, because Frank's been to a lot of big time games throughout his life. So if something comes up like a Jordan game or something, he'll go, "I was there." So it lives on, and we laugh. And Mike should lighten up about it a little bit, because imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And I don't think Gio is coming from a bad place.
No, and he's keeping their spirit alive in a way, so that people who never listen to them might go back and watch them on YouTube or something of that nature.
100%.
And I absolutely love it.
Yes, I do too.
So kind of switching gears a little bit, you hosted the Chris Shearn show.
Yeah, that's the podcast.
The weekly sports podcast. What inspired you to start the podcast, and how differently do you approach that compared to your television work?
I just had lunch with the guy who started it for me. He was in charge of our digital side at Yes. And he came up to me and said, "Hey, we might have a Sirius XM radio channel, and we want you to start a podcast, and you're going to be one of our hosts if and when we launch it." So I was like, "Okay, I'm in." So I started doing it. I built an audience. It wasn't, I mean, I'm not talking about Joe Rogan or Candace Owens, but it was a pretty good audience for little old me in my office, my little cubicle of an office, doing a talk show by myself. But, when I had Ian Eagle on, the listens went skyrocketing. When I had Michael Kay on, again, I had Brian Cashman. So it's a different form of preparation. And I got to tip the cap to Jack Curry, because he has really added to the evolution of me interviewing, whether it's on the BP show, the pre and post game show, or doing my podcast. You want to have an outline. You want to have questions built. But if you ask that first question and that answer comes back and you have like 3 questions to that answer, you got to throw the script away and you got to just look into the camera and have a conversation.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes the best podcast. And if you watched Rogan ever, that's what makes this show so great. They could be talking about bow hunting 1 second. They're talking about bourbon the next second. Then they're talking about politics. Then they're talking about aliens. It's like, this is phenomenal. I love this. This is
And
like
it goes on for 3 hours.
Yeah, and it gets me to Brooklyn. That's what we call a callback in the comedy business.
Yes.
Yeah, so the preparation, it has to be there, but I think it's preparation and then conversation. You want to have an idea of where you want to go and what you want to talk about, but you also want to keep your ears on. Remember the CB radio days? Are your ears on? Keep your ears on, because if you miss something that could take that podcast and put it through the ceiling, just because you're looking down at your notes and you're looking at the next question, I don't know. I mean, Jack always taught me, you have to pay attention. You have to have a plan, but that plan goes out the window if you see a window open and you could jump through and have a conversation. That's the best way I could describe the preparation for a podcast.
I think that's great advice, especially for two novices like us trying to, as we get through episode 40 here. We never thought we'd get to 40. We were happy to get through 1.
Yeah.
But that's what you have to do. That's the other thing. You can't stop.
Right.
If you're doing 1 a week, you got to keep doing 1 a week. If you're doing 2 a week, you got to keep doing 2 a week. You got to keep putting them out, and you got to keep promoting it. Those are the 2 most important things: consistency and promoting and marketing. You have to get the word out there. If you want me to tweet it, I'll tweet it. I mean, I only have 6,000 followers. It's not like I have a big following. Jesus only had 12, so I'm not going to go crazy.
Hey, I'll tag you when we get to posting of this later on down the road. And any help is greatly appreciated.
Yes, I'll get eyeballs on it. I mean, I'm not going to promise you guys like 300,000 views because, it's me first and foremost. And, it's not like you're talking to Michael K here.
Speaking of that, hey, if you enjoy this experience, feel free to send some of those guys our way. We're always looking for guests. I mean, we do know each other, Chris, so even from a distance.
Well, we could talk off camera.
Absolutely.
You have my number now, and if you have suggestions, I could definitely bring it up with them, and maybe we could make something work. And look, I'm not going to promise you anything, but
we know that for sure.
But I could promise you one thing: that I will approach and make the offer.
Hey, that's all you can ask for, and that's we've had, I think one of the guests that I was quite proud of in the beginning of this was episode 25. We had Coach Thomas Ford Jr. on from University of Idaho, and he's their head football coach. And he liked one of our posts from a previous episode. And I just looked at it and I says, what do I have to lose here? And I messaged him, and I will admit, to my shock and surprise, he responded the next morning, and we ended up getting him on the show. And
he's trying to build a program.
Right. And the worst thing that can happen is they say no. And so you just move on to the next person or that next potential target, so to speak, without coming across like that.
Bottle that up, what you just said, and drink it every day.
Right.
You have to ask. What did Wayne Gretzky say? I know John Herbst knows.
Yeah. He's a huge fan. Well, you miss all the shots you don't take.
You miss,
simple as that.
Of the shots you don't take. You have to take the shot. And I've asked people on my podcast. They've said no.
Right.
Well, all right. Like, I tried forever to get Hank Azaria on. Forever. I wanted to talk to him about Brockmeyer. I want to talk about the Simpsons, like everything.
Right.
The Birdcage, which he was phenomenal in.
Yes.
I finally got a yes. And it had nothing to do with him. Chris Carlin hooked me up with his publicist. We had it set. And then because he was a fan of a different team, they didn't want me to talk about the Mets. So okay, whatever. It is what it is. I'm not going to die on that hill.
Chris, I'm a Met fan too, and I don't even want to talk about him.
Yeah, this year was rough. This year was 100%.
All the teams I like are horrible. And I'm not a Jets fan either, so I'm a Giants fan. At least our future is somewhat bright.
Giants looking pretty good.
If they can stay healthy.
Yeah.
They can't stay healthy.
The Giants need a new coach and a new GM. It's going to be Finnegan begin again for them.
But at least the future is somewot brighter with these younger kids if they can just stay on the field.
That's the main thing. Do you think Dart, the way he plays, I love the kid, But the way
Listen,
he plays is an injury waiting to happen.
I'm texting Matty Mo all the time. You know, listen, he and I, we align. You know, we grew
Slide
up together
for crying out loud.
Yeah, we grew up together in Brooklyn. You know, he moved to South River. That's why I said earlier I'm an adopted son of the town, because when my family moved to New Jersey,
you're a son. You're not adopted. You're a son. Michael Tita, one of my best friends from South River, grew up in Brooklyn.
Right.
Okay. He is South River. So
yeah,
don't say you're adopted.
That's where I hung out. You know, when Matt and I reconnected, that's how I got, you know, that's how I met Sanborn and Herbst and Noto and DeSantis, and God, I can just go on and I'll bore the rest of our listeners here. But you know, and it was like, you know, I'll text them and I'm like, dude, you know, like Scatterboost just is a concussion waiting to happen. You know, and you appreciate the effort, the hard work, and what he brings.
Yes.
But then I almost wish his injury was a concussion, because the way he got hurt just sucked watching it.
It's a fine line with those guys, like because we haven't seen that heart in God knows how long with this team. So for Giant fans, like you just said, it's refreshing to see that. But at the same time, we're realists. These guys run around on the field. Like I punted. I tried out for the XFL in 2000. I didn't make it, obviously, but I did. I flew out to California. I went to the tryout. I didn't make it. And then, as luck would have it, Drew Pearson was the general manager of the Hitmen, and Rich Bird.
Another South River great right there.
And Rich Bird, who is also another South River great, by the way. He modeled the uniforms for the Hitmen, and Drew was talking to him, man, I need a kicker. And he said, do you need a punter? Because I know a punter. And he said, well, does he place kick too? Because they just combine the positions to save money. So I was that close, because I'm sure he would have had me come to the stadium for a tryout, but place kicking, not my forte.
Well, Chris, you know, you just jogged something in my memory here, and I left one important person out in South River, and if I don't mention him, I'll never hear the end of it. But the quarterback, but the quarterback number 17, Andy Diem. I mean, you know.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Theismann.
No, I wasn't going to go Theismann, because he's very popular. I'm talking about Andy Diem over here, because you know how do we not mention him when we're talking about this motley crew of people out of South River?
Andy.
But
our union here.
Yeah, it is. Well, I think the last time we actually saw each other was in John's basement when Brian came home from California, probably for the holidays.
Oh, that was a long time ago. Jeez.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. But we got together for like a hockey night. We still have done that. Not in a while, since we've gotten older and busier. But no, I mean, it's all great stuff. But yeah, I mean, Andy was one of those guys. If I didn't, Andy, I apologize. It took almost 51 minutes to get your name into this episode.
I'm sure he'll be fine.
But you're in it. You're in it, Andy. We got you in there. But so, Chris, you know, what's the future hold for you? Like, where do you see yourself? You know, is there any projects that you're working on moving forward with?
No projects. I'm still happily employed, gainfully employed, and happy to be gainfully employed. My friend Mark Malusis, I just found out yesterday, he was let go by WPIX. So the business is very volatile right now. There's a lot of scaling back. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's the truth. I really can't talk at length about it because I don't know. I worry about one thing. When I'm on the schedule, being there and killing it. That's all I worry about. Right. God could take care of the rest. I need to do my job. That's all I do. And there's no projects in the it's Nets, Yankees, and if the Liberty bring me back, so be it. I would love to do play-by-play for them. Again, I got a championship ring this season.
Yes.
It was amazing. I love calling the games. They're so much fun to watch. It's old school basketball. I try to tell everybody who'll listen, like, that's the basketball I grew up watching. It's cutting, it's ball movement. You know, they're not running, they're not dunking. You know, they have to play the game the way it's supposed to be played. Now, look, they do take a lot of threes because the whole league takes a lot of threes. Analytics, 3 is greater than 2. However, I always say 2 is greater than Zippo.
0.
So I don't know why there isn't more paint touches and getting down low. You have 2 of the best paint players in the WNBA in Jonquel Jones and Breanna Stewart. I don't know why they're not touching the ball more in the paint. Stewie around like that midi area, around the elbow, around the painted area, she is money. She's like Durant in that area. Her jumper it's true and it's silky smooth. And Jonquel is a beast. When they let her go and when they let her be Jonquel, she could have 17 and 17 every night. But there's so much talent on that team, she doesn't have to do that. But when she needs to, and that's the great thing about the Liberty, and I know you didn't ask me about it, but I'm going to talk about them anyway.
Absolutely.
They have so much talent on that team, and they all have to take kind of a back seat. But if they see one of those special talents doesn't have it that night, they know, like, instinctively, all right, I got to step up, and they take over. And that's why they're so successful. This season, they fell short. Look, Phoenix, they just matched up well against them. And I think, I can't confirm this, but I think Sabrina was still hurt. I think she had something still going on with that foot that she injured in practice late August. And I don't think she got right before the playoffs. She's a dog. She went out there and she played there. She is so tough. There's a lot of players I love watching in that league, but she's got to be at the top, because when somebody gets under her skin, like when she was a rookie, maybe first, second year, she only played 2.5 games a rookie season before she had that devastating ankle injury.
Right.
But when you challenge her, I'm not trying to compare myself to her athletically, because she'll dribble circles around me and beat me 11-0 if we were playing that way. but the mindset is the same.
Right.
You're coming at me? Okay. All right. We'll see. We'll see next time down the floor. That's the killer instinct that sometimes is lacking in professional sports these days. You know, I liked back in the day when I would go to a Yankee game and Yankees Red Sox, they didn't talk to each other. They didn't come over and pat each other on the fanny.
Nope.
They hated each other. And I don't mind, you know, now you change teams so much.
Right.
I get it. You know, I'm not going to be this old head that says you need to hate each other. If you're on the same team and you're friends, you want to talk and catch up, fine. Once the game starts, no fraternizing. Go out there between the lines and win the game. I don't want to see you yucking it up with guys on the other team.
Well, I think that's something that to what I think you might have been going to say is, like, that's the generation we grew up in, because and listen, we didn't have interleague play the way we do in baseball, where there's always a game every night. And, you know, that's the All-Star game and the World Series had more special meaning to us, because the only time you ever got to see the greats in both leagues play was in those two moments. And to some degree, it's been watered down. But, you know, fans now get to see these players that they otherwise would not have seen. So there's a good and a bad to it. I
Munson and Fisk hated each other.
Oh, they hated each other. Listen, being a Met fan, you know, I was always a National League fan, and I'll never forget Matty Moe's dad, Eddie, Eddie Moe. So, who we unfortunately lost this year, but he was National League through and through, and he despised the
My
DH
dad too.
And then I just got to a point where I was tired of watching the pitcher making out or not bunt. And I'm like, you know what? The Mets need all the help they can get. So if they can put another bat in the lineup, please just give them another bat, because, and it didn't help them this year anyway. But, it's just everything evolves. And if you don't evolve, you go away. And I think that's the most important thing you got to remember.
Bottle that up and drink that every day too. Seriously, you're giving yourself gold here, Harry.
No, I appreciate. Well, Chris, you're too kind, because that's because we know each other. But
no, I'm being completely honest. Like, no,
I do appreciate that.
And this is for your listeners too. Like, if there's young kids who want to get into this business, that's the piece of advice they need to listen to. You can't remain the same.
Right.
And you wrestled, didn't you?
Yep. All through college.
Yeah. Can you remain the same when you're a wrestler? Do you have to adjust? I never wrestled, so I'm talking from like a place I shouldn't be talking. But my point is, you had to, like, if you had an opponent that had a move that you needed to counter, you needed to do that too. Like, you had to go into that match saying, all right, I've watched film on this guy. The wrestlers aren't all the same. You have to go in there and you have to evolve to beat the guy that's in front of you. Am I right or wrong?
You
can tell me I'm wrong. Okay.
You're 100% right. It's a constant scramble. It's a constant, going from one movement to the next, to the next, to the next, and putting these different puzzle pieces together. And that's what makes, the puzzle, or makes the match, So
Scotty Muscle wrestled. I remember he was like, I think he was like 103 in South River. Watching him wrestle was like watching a clinic. It was an absolute clinic. They used to give the guys pins for their warm-ups.
Mhm.
It was just covered in pins. The guy was he was a maniac in a good way on the mat. There was no way I was going to wrestle. I was a basketball player, and I wasn't a good basketball player, but that's what I was doing. So,
well, Chris, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time out of your day to be a part of this.
I'm sorry I talk so much.
No, listen, this was absolutely fantastic, and it was great in some ways catching up with you as well because it's been a while.
Here.
And I'm going to hold you. I'm going to reach out to you off air, and we'll see. We don't have to shoot for the moon. We'll see if we can gradually grow into that role. But I'd love to pick your brain a little bit to see if there is anyone that maybe we can
Harry
have on as a future guest.
I'm here for whatever you need. If you want to send me a list, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
Some guys might not do it.
But
guys like Jack Curry, he'll jump on. Absolutely, 100%.
That'd be a great get, and we'll definitely touch base.
If you just straight up talk baseball with him, he will.
That's what I played in college. So I mean, that's not hard for me to do.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
He'll be a great guest, and I'll ask him because he's got the off season now, so now would be a great time to get him.
No, that'd be awesome. Well, Chris, I cannot thank you again. We really do appreciate you taking the time to be a part of our journey and sharing some of your own insights and being a part of Destination Talk episode 40. And until we meet again,
cut it.